of you I know, if you've loved comics all your life like I have, then you've probably spent a lot of time trying to create your own comics and trying to do your own work, and you've dreamt of maybe being, you know, involved in the industry in some way. And I always had, but I've never done anything much about it. Partly also because I'd always drawn, and my art isn't good enough. It quite simply isn't professional standard artwork, because, you know, when you see there are some people, I'm sure, who are gifted and just hit the ground running. But most people, they do study. They put years of work into it, like Tommy, and they study the old school way, you know, composition and figure work and all that kind of stuff, and lighting. And that's why, and you can see that in Tommy's work, and he might talk about some of his influences. He's influenced as much by the great American magazine illustrators and commercial illustrators as he is comic book artists. Probably more so. Would that be fair, Tommy?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is where I went to school, you know, was a very traditional kind of illustration teaching. It was a school called Art Center in Los Angeles, and so a lot of those guys, like actually Bob Peak went there. So it's a very kind of, you know, just drawing and painting from the figure, very old school.
I mean, if you don't know Bob Peak's name, some of the young guys might not hear. Bob Peak was a classic magazine and commercial arts illustrator who sort of dabbled in everything really, but always did it brilliantly. And he's probably the most famous kind of genre work. You know, he did a lot of the design work for Rollerball, the original '70s movie, and he did the poster designs for that and the costume designs as well. I think, and you really see, and when you see the art, I mean, it's just exceptional. I see a lot of it in Tommy's work. So we got together because I used to spend a lot of time in the summers. I still sketch and draw comics myself all the time. And when I was first thinking about Turf, before I even knew about Tommy, I drew a couple of pages of it, which I tried to find and bring along to you because they were so piss poor. I thought they were using, but I couldn't find them, I'm afraid, so my wife probably found them out. We did have cats who used to deliberately seek out some of my work to piss on. Really, if I left anything near the floor, they would actually move stuff out of the way to urinate on my artwork. The only thing they had once favoured of was a picture of me and Jack D together, and they had a field day on that. So they were cats with a very finely honed critical sense. But I came up with various ideas, but Turf wasn't one of the early ones. One summer, does anyone here remember Atlas Comics from the 1970s? Yeah. Okay, the story is Martin Goodman, who used to be the kind of managing director and publisher of Marvel. He split with Marvel, and when he sold it to this other company, I think initially Max Factor, or the Cadence Corporation owned it, and the deal was that Chip Goodman, his son, who apparently was a real loser, you know, a lazy guy who was just interested, not focused on work at all. The deal was that he stayed on the board of directors, and literally as soon as they could, they got shot of him. So he was furious. So the kind of fairly petty act of rivalry, he set up a whole new company called Atlas. And it was kind of a brilliant time to be a comic fan. This was about 72, 73, because he set it up hoping to crush Marvel. That was his dream. You know, really bitter, angry guy. What he did though was, for years of having exploited the artists and writers, which is what Marvel always did, I think, up until more recent times, he offered really great page rates for all the artists and writers. They could own their creations. It was kind of a model in a way, for images, but it wasn't done out of kind of a sense of what was right, or largesse, or kind of any kind of moral belief. It was just because he wanted to crush Marvel. And what was great was most of the books only went for 2, 3, or 4 issues. But people like Bernie Wrightson came over, Alex Toth did some work for them, Sam Ditko did some stuff for them, Neil Adams did some covers, Pat Broderick, Bernie Wrightson. Some great artists came over and worked for them for this brief period. But what fascinated me about it was it kind of appeared, and then within a year it had gone. So suddenly, out of nowhere, this whole new comic company came and they tried to steal the Marvel idea. It was like the House of Atlas and Stay With Us, True Believers, but they changed it a little bit, so like, you know, Real Believers or something, just enough so they wouldn't get sued. And then they disappeared. So I spent the summer rather firstly, and this shows you, you know, how much time obviously I had on my hands, trying to create a whole new comic line just for fun. And I did about 20 covers of these terrible characters. It would have been fine for Atlas. And I told Mark about it. He said, you know, you're pathetic. B, you should do something. You just say you're a little footnote in history of comics because you love it. And so I decided I would, and I started seriously trying to write some ideas. And then he said he would hook me up with some artists, and he told me how some of the models, the way you can do stuff. And some of the people we worked with recently, he said, I have numbers for these guys. And the artist that I loved the most of all the guys he'd been with recently was Tommy's work, because I'd seen 1985. Many of you know about 1985, which was an incredible piece of work, wasn't it? And it was a great idea. I think it was very well written, but also it was just so beautifully and evocatively and lushly illustrated, and it worked perfectly for that project. So he hooked me up with Tommy, who was kind enough to sort of tolerate my initial phone conversations, and then we agreed we'd try and do something together. And I said, how many ideas did I put? Was it 3 ideas I sent over?
Yeah, I think we had 3 we talked about.
3 ideas, and the ideas were, we should say what the ideas were. One was, and the one that was the least formed, in actual fact, in my head or even on paper, was Turf. The other two, one was a really very commercial, very crass commercial idea, which I still like, and we should maybe do it someday, called Zombie Island. Okay, so you can maybe guess what it was about. But it was, I think, a little bit cooler than that, because it had a strong female character, some quite good ideas in it. And that was one idea, but we both agreed, A, there were too many zombie books in the world already, frankly, and also it just didn't feel right. And the other one was a kind of strange superhero idea, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was kind of Marvel, you know, kind of something akin to Stan Lee Ditko stuff to me.
But then we thought that, but then Kick-Ass came out, and Kick-Ass was due out. We thought we didn't want to see about Kick-Ass, and also that idea wasn't fully through either, because initially I was going to call him Special Boy. I wanted him to be, what I loved about Spider-Man was the fact that the early Spider-Man was, he was almost, not embarrassed about it, but it was a big secret. And it was a secret, and I thought what would be cool was that you weren't keeping a secret because you had an art, you were keeping a secret because everyone just thought you were really weird. It was like someone finding out you were a serial masturbator, or you had something, you know, and because this power just came from his body, he didn't want people to know. And the papers dubbed him Special Boy, and everyone said, and then it became a kind of insult as well, and that was the idea. So you can see that wasn't really fully fulfilled either. And Tommy wisely steered me away from that, but you almost went with that one, we almost did that one, didn't we?
Yeah, I think, yeah, gosh, I remember, I think I finally settled on Zombie Island in my mind, and then I literally sat up in the middle of the night and you know, woke up and thought, no, we have to do the vampire gangster thing. And then at that point, that's kind of all, I don't think there were even aliens in the story yet.
No, well, there weren't, I don't think you'd seen it, but I found something the other day. I found a really good, because we're bringing some stuff out, because we're going to release it as a trade paperback or kind of hardback. Probably March next year, I think it is. So obviously we're going to put some extra stuff in. There's a cover I drew for Turf, which I sent to Tommy, and he said, "Yeah, I remember I used to draw like that when I was first learning how to draw." That's your response. Because obviously it was crushing.